$600 million.
The bulk of the governor's proposal remains the same. The governor says he would still like to see some of the money used for construction of elementary and secondary classrooms, renovation and repair of existing mental health facilities, construction of new prison facilities, deepening the Mobile Bay Channel leading to the state docks, and injection of money to spur Alabama housing starts over the next 3 years. But one plan of the governor's to use some of the money to provide local governments with some collateral money for projects of their own fell to the wayside because of what the governor called technical problems in setting up such a public fund. So he's decided on some other projects, including paying counties $6 million to cover the cost of housing state inmates, spending $10 million to develop a plan to strengthen Alabama's university's research and development programs. The idea here is to develop Alabama into an economic center for the Sun Belt. Spend $10 million to move State Highway Department employees into a new building and use their existing building to house state agencies that now rent space throughout Montgomery. Spend $12 million to renovate the interior of the State Capitol building. And also spend $2 million to renovate Garrett Coliseum in Montgomery, the heart of many statewide agricultural events. And the governor says because this issue is so important, it will be the only matter taken up during the November 3rd special session. His education reforms will be taken up during a later special session. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
Now, the other projects that we are interested in here in bind. Facilities come into compliance by assets for the people of Alabama. And those assets need to be listed and put on a board where every man and woman... Another one, that's $65 million of your asset money that everybody knows what... And in the first $75 million be given... Because that interest money has already been appropriated. But...
I don't think Commissioner Hopper could escape but the fact that there needed to be some reorganization. I particularly think that the post of deputy commissioner being abolished was a very wise thing. To this extent, I'm not a peniologist. I don't know a thing about corrections, but I do know that one person should not be in control of a man's liberty within a system like that. I think you should diffuse and have a lot of people responsible as to whether or not a person gets a weekend pass of pre-discretionary leave. I don't think one person should be the so-called czar of that sort of thing, and that's what we had before with Commissioner Cole.
As we learned at 6 tonight, Alabama is looking for a little revenge this Saturday in Tuscaloosa against Mississippi State. In Jackson last year, the Bulldogs knocked off Alabama 6-3, breaking a 28-game winning streak and knocking the Crimson Tide out of their search for a third straight national championship. But wanting revenge and getting revenge is a different story. The Crimson Tide realizes they face a formidable opponent in Emory Billard's Bulldogs.
They have a great kicking game. They'll beat you in one play in the kicking game, any phase of the kicking game. So I don't think you can beat them with a kicking game. If you time, if you hold them off, you have a chance to win. And they have a great defense. And if you got to do something about that, you got to win the trenches and battle in the trenches to get the bun. If you don't get the bun, you're not going to beat them because they're going to move the ball on you and they're going to score points.
I know they beat us last year. They, just stopped us totally on offense, and we've got to prove ourselves to them this year that we can move the ball on them and that we can play like Alabama's capable of. and we got to play an errorless ball game we're playing this week.
They're going to be very tough to stop. I mean, they are one of the biggest and strongest offensive line we played against this year, and they're very talented, like you said before. And basically, we're going to have to just psych ourselves up and get ready to play a good game.
Another note about Saturday's game, Alabama hasn't lost in Tuscaloosa since 1963, winning 54 straight in Bryant-Denny Stadium. A win Saturday will place Bear Bryant at 313 career victories, tying him with Glenn Pop Warner for second on the all-time list, and leaving him one shy of Amos Alonzo Stagg's record of 314 wins. Kickoff in sold-out Bryant-Denny Stadium is set for 1:30 Saturday afternoon. Reporting from Tuscaloosa, Rick Pons, WSFA TV Sports. To say that this week's Alabama-Mississippi State game in Tuscaloosa is a big game is perhaps the understatement of the year. A win Saturday could put either team on the road to the SEC Championship and the Sugar Bowl, as well as a possible national championship. The Mississippi State game is the first of three very important contests that could make or break the Crimson Tide season. Add all this with the fact that State upset Alabama in Jackson last year, and you have the ingredients for quite a football game.
Well, it's just about as big as a game we get for us. It's our next one. It's a home game. I know our players like to keep the strain going out there, and actually it's what football's all about. We get down to where we're playing the big, tough games. I think we've had a big, tough game every week because it's easier to get your team ready. I mean, get them ready mentally for a tough game. They know it's tough, and there's a lot of writing.
Warren, how big is this Mississippi State game?
One of the biggest we haven't played in a while.
Why?
Because there's a team that beat us last year and knocked us out of all our goals, and basically we're just down in our hearts. We want our revenge.
Is revenge going to play a lot in this ball game?
Well, I'm pretty sure it is, because everybody wants to regain our title. In other words, not losing to them, beat them this year.
There are a lot of things that just roll down into this one ball game, and we just need to take advantage of it. If we win this one, we'll have Penn State up next. You know, we'll move up in the polls, and then we'll be playing the #1 team. This game is a lot of pride involved because of last year what happened over in Jackson. I think we're a lot more prepared this year. We've got a little better offensive scheme to go at them with. We know what they're going to be doing. It's just something that gets you down inside where you know you've got to do the job.
Going into Saturday's contest, Alabama has been made an early 7-point favorite to revenge last year's 6-3 loss. Tonight at 10, we'll find out what Coach Bryant and the players are expecting from the Bulldogs. Reporting from Tuscaloosa, Rick Pons, WSFA TV Sports.
At the AFL-CIO 13th biannual meeting in Montgomery this week, over 257,000 union members in the state of Alabama are represented, and the executive vice president of the Alabama Labor Council, William Mintz, says all of them are giving PATCO their full support. Mintz calls the tactics of the Reagan administration the most dastardly thing that's ever happened to organized labor in the United States. Mintz isn't alone in his evaluation. A regional representative for the AFL-CIO, Clarence Frost, says the international organization has already raised over $1 million to help PATCO members meet personal debts incurred during the strike.
I know we're going to stand behind the people 100%.
Is this union busting?
Yes, it is. What else could you label it except union busting?
And though local PATCO President C.J. Favre doesn't have any comment on the union's decertification, he says the support of the other unions at the convention helps morale, and PATCO is holding together. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News. When Ronald Reagan ran for the presidency, he won at least in part on votes cast by members of the only two major unions endorsing him, the Teamsters and PATCO. Now, during the 13th biannual meeting of the AFL-CIO Alabama Labor Council this week, organized labor support for Reagan seems considerably weaker, while support for making unions stronger seems to have been bolstered instead of weakened by the air traffic controller's strike and subsequent firing. And PATCO is making the most of the meeting, talking to union delegates and distributing literature to further argue their cause. One item is a letter written in 1980 to PATCO President Robert Polhi by then presidential candidate Ronald Reagan. It says the deplorable state of our nation's air traffic control system with too few people working unreasonable hours has placed the nation's air travelers in unwarranted danger.
In the letter, candidate Reagan made a pledge to the air traffic controllers to try to solve their problems, a pledge which union officials now say President Reagan has broken. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
Montgomery School Superintendent Henry Adair says his first priority is to replace the 227 temporary classrooms in the county with permanent ones. He says the second priority is general maintenance like roofing, electrical repairs, wiring, and restroom improvements. Adair says there are 2,100 classrooms in the county. He says at least half are 25 years old and 500 are over 50 years old. Adair says the list is almost complete and should be sent to the governor by the end of the week, but says work has just begun on an overall school system survey outlining each school's basic needs. He says the school system is also conducting a study to determine how much energy is being used in the 4 large high schools. Adair says a local firm will conduct the study and make recommendations for energy conservation. Montgomery County will get part of the bond issue money, which will be divided equally among each school student. But Adair hopes Montgomery County will also get some money to help pay for the energy study. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
The Stocker 700 program has been researched at Auburn University experiment stations for the last 10 to 20 years. This morning, a health management workshop was held at the Tolman Farm in the Hope Hole community. Auburn State specialists were on hand to answer any questions regarding the new program, and using live animals, cattlemen were given the opportunity to gain hands-on experience with growth implants, internal parasite control, dehorning, and individual identification methods. Alabama cattle producers are becoming aware of the need to retain their calves for an additional growing period following weaning. If sold at weaning, the average Alabama calf will not defray the cost of keeping one cow for 1 year. However, good returns can be expected from stockers carried to 700 pounds.
This is adding a few hundred extra pounds on our weanling calves, therefore keeping the cattle here in the state and raising these cattle to 700 to 800 pounds before they go out to the west to be fed in the feedlots. Therefore, it's the cattlemen are gaining extra dollars on their income.
According to extension reports, if 25% of the state's 1 million calves were stockered and sold at 700 pounds instead of being sold as they presently are at less than 400 pounds, Alabama cattlemen would receive an additional $25 million in annual income. Matt Carmack, WSFA TV News.
Members in the round-robin program. The Prattville YMCA stands ready to meet the challenge.
Improvement daily, something that would build their confidence, really does something spectacular, makes a good fall.
It was only fitting and proper that the lady who sat at the secretarial helm for 37 years delivered the address. It was also proper that Dorothy Bush talk about the changes and participation of women over the years in the decision-making levels of government, business, and the professions. But Mrs. Bush says women did not obtain their leadership roles without first overcoming obstacles. She says perseverance and patience kept women going. Today, Mrs. Bush says women hold several top governmental seats when only a few years ago it was unheard of.
To predict that at least the younger women in this audience will see the next barrier in the upward political ladder broken in our country when a woman will become the Vice President of the United States.
Bush reminisced of her own experiences, saying the Reagan administration makes the ninth while serving as secretary of the Democratic National Committee. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News in Marion.
Incidentally, Franklin Roosevelt, that is.
A due-on-sale clause written into a mortgage contract precludes creative financing, making it necessary to pay off the balance of the loan before selling. But new financing isn't always at the current interest rate. Sometimes lenders are willing to accept equity sales at lower rates, say 14 to 15%, but it's still up to the lender. President of the Alabama League of Savings and Loans, Doug Amos, says a due-on-sale clause in a contract protects the lender.
The Federal Home Loan Mortgage Corporation, which is the primary, secondary mortgage marketer for the savings and loan business, Fannie Mae, which is your Federal National Mortgage Association, and Ginnie Mae, they, in most cases, require now that this type of mortgage because it's more marketable in the secondary market.
In Alabama, due-on-sale clauses have been upheld. In 1980, the state Supreme Court affirmed by a vote of 4 to 3 that mortgage lenders do have the right to enforce due-on-sale clauses.
Are the lenders still willing to leave out like a due-on-sales clause these days?
I don't think we've run into many people that were willing to forget about it. It's a fact of life that we are in times that have changed.
Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
Knight says he doesn't want bodyguards, he just wants the state to know what's going on.
Well, I'm just observing some precautionary measures just in case that there's some validity to it. I'm not taking it very serious to the point that I need protection or bodyguard or anything of that nature.
District Attorney Jimmy Evans says by Knight requesting protective status, it could give his office more to work with. If Knight is granted protective status, any resulting charges would be upgraded from a misdemeanor to a felony. Evans says he believes the letter and phone calls Knight received are a cheap shakedown or extortion attempt and are not racially or politically motivated.
It just looks like, to me, a situation where someone's trying to enjoy themselves by intimidating or threatening a public official. I wouldn't say it was racial or political in any sense like that, no.
And you don't think this Evans says he will ask Knight to resubmit the letter to the troopers asking for protective status to comply with the law. Don Phelps, WSFA TV News.
If everything falls into place, some Alabamians may share in up to $200 million in relatively low-interest home loans. The idea is part of Governor James' plan to spend the oil revenue money, but is being handled through the State Housing Authority, an administrative body created by the legislature as a means of bypassing a law prohibiting the state from lending money to private enterprise. Meeting at the state capitol today, the Housing Authority set up guidelines for the $200 million proposed bond issue. But the bond issue will never happen if the legislature doesn't approve the proposal. And there are a number of legislators, primarily from rural areas, upset about a similar previous loan program. The Housing Authority never addressed any means to guarantee loans going to rural counties, but said instead that those financial institutions that ask for the money will get it. Those people who want to use some of the money will find the interest rates at about 15%, and they'll have to qualify in a tentative income level of $32,000 to $34,000, not own a home in the last 3 years, and not intend to build or pay for a new home costing more than $60,000 to $70,000, and have 5% down payment, all on a first-come, first-served basis. There are other limitations and even some exceptions that would allow the money to be used for buying existing homes or home improvements. Whether all of this comes about will be decided beginning next week when the legislature gathers to consider Governor James's overall windfall oil lease revenue spending plan. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
American working man.
Mrs. Collier says very few American automotive goods are exported to Japan, yet American automakers buy a number of Japanese products. She and 17 other American executives will tour Japan next month. Mrs. Collier says she hopes to try to improve the trade situation by coming back with some American purchase orders, but she says that probably won't happen because the only solution may lie in a change in our international trade policy.
I would put whatever restriction that the country puts on us. If they put a tariff on our cars, our parts, I would put a restriction on a tariff on their part. If they would outlaw certain labor-intensive items, as Mexico does, I would disallow certain of theirs. if they would put unrealistic stuff on cars like Japan does, and hopefully I will have what those are when I get back. American cars, then we should do the same.
Mrs. Collier says if the situation doesn't improve, more Americans will be out of jobs. She says when she returns, she'll talk with government officials and give them her solution to the problem. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
The music sounds a trifle out of place amid the oil cans and tires, the violins and cello blending their classic notes to the roar of traffic and the clank of tools, while tennis shoes mark time on Mozart. But the students are performing tonight in Mobile, and practice does make perfect. When the chamber players take the stage tonight, they'll be joined by other ASFA students, dancers, actors and actresses, and the knowledge they've forever changed the meaning of the words garage band. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
I'm just observing some precautionary measures just in case that there's some validity to it. I'm not taking it. I would hope that the district attorney would be able to come up with something in the next.
What happened?
Well, over a couple of weeks ago, I received an anonymous letter in the mail, and it had tones of blackmail or extortion. I turned all of this over to the district attorney as well as to the U.S. attorney and asked that they immediately start an investigation into it, and they have been doing that. And subsequent to that time, I received a few telephone calls at my home number of threatening nature, and that's about the extent of it.
Were they life-threatening phone calls or what?
They were more harassing type calls. I don't want to go into details at this point. I would prefer, any information of that nature coming from the district attorney's office.
Has happened so far in the investigation into the alleged threats against Mr. Knight?
Don, Commissioner Knight came to our office a few days ago. He advised us that apparently there had been some threat to intimidate him, threats and harassment. He brought with him a certain document. We took the document and we conducted a preliminary investigation to determine whether or not
I'm tired of living. I'm tired of, I killed 4 innocent people.
Do you realize that you say you want the death, but do you realize in saying what you said here that you've more or less confessed to this thing and more or less sealed your fate?
Well, I'd say
why you did it?
I'd say I confessed if I took him to the body, wouldn't you? I started out just to rob banks and embarrass the government, and there was a killing involved.
Lanier capitalized on a Selma turnover to score their first touchdown. Driving 60 yards in 5 plays, the Poets scored on a 23-yard pass from John Thomas to Andre Pollard. At the minute mark of the first quarter, it's 7-0 Lanier. The Poets scored again right before half with Arthur Stokes taking it in from the 1. After the extra point, Lanier holds a 14-0 halftime lead. The Poets celebrating homecoming at Crampton Bowl tonight. Before the Queen is back in her seat, Lanier is on the board again. Wiley Vincent takes the opening kickoff in at his own 5, finds the wedge up the middle, breaks a couple of tackles, and races 95 yards for the touchdown. Lanier in total command at this point. It's 21-0. The Poets add another late third quarter score, and the Saints avoid the shutout when Ernest Thomas scores from the 9. The final, Sidney Lanier 28, Selma 6. The Poets improve to 5-4. The Saints fall to 3-7. Reporting from Crampton Bowl, Rick Pons, WSFA TV Sports.
I love it, and I think the players love it. We just love that, good feel up there.
Also, you're getting another good team. Of course, that's nothing new. All of them have been.
All of them. We got 10 good teams to play.
How do you describe A&M?
Well, it's something like Tennessee State. They're big like that, and they do a lot of things. And passing, they send both backs out of the backfield, and they send the tight ends. The passing pattern is similar to Tennessee State.
Got them, and then next week you got Grambling on the road, but you are coming home soon, aren't you?
14.
November 14th.
Right.
We will get to see Alabama State and Crampton Bowl. You promise?
That's promise.
In the past, when home building and automobile sales have slowed, the economy as a whole has slowed. But that has not been the case this time. We have sectors of the economy that business is good as ever. We are seeing a definite trend toward smaller homes, condominiums, townhouses, patio homes, this type of thing. We're also seeing a definite trend toward multi-family, multi-unit housing, triplexes, quadplexes, this type of thing.
Cantrell says these changes he's predicting are directly related to the high interest rates homeowners and prospective homeowners are facing. He says mortgage payments are a record 35% of the average household's disposable income. What's in the future for savings and loans? Doug Amos, president of the Alabama League of Savings and Loans, says right now S&Ls are out of the active housing market and have been for 6 months. He says it's not because there's no money available, it's due to the high interest rates. But he says S&Ls want to get back into the market as soon as possible because housing is their specialty. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
At a news conference on the steps of the state capitol, Chris Bentz told reporters he has left the Democratic Party and joined the Republican ranks as a matter of conscience.
I support President Reagan. I voted for President Reagan. I'm proud to tell you that. That means I cannot be in the Democratic Party. I support the Republican Party and what it's trying to do. I think it's necessary. I think our country is in trouble. Our state's in trouble. Government's in trouble. We're all in trouble. And being wishy-washy and wearing 2, 3, 4 different hats for all the different factions of one party is not going to help our country or our state get out of the trouble that it's in.
Bentz, a resident of Abbeville, will run for the state Senate seat now held by Senator Mike Weeks of Troy.
Today, when I tell you that I am joining the Republican Party and I'm going to work hard to become their candidate for Senate, state of Alabama, District 23. We're going to cut.
There was another familiar face at the news conference. His political plans tonight at 10. Matt Carmack, WSFA TV News.
I don't like what they're doing with it now. An argument.
At a news conference on the steps of the state capitol, Chris Bentz told reporters he has left the Democratic Party and joined the Republican ranks and will be a candidate for state Senate.
Today, when I tell you that I am joining the Republican Party and I'm going to work hard to become their candidate for Senate, state of Alabama, District 23.
Montgomery Mayor Emery Falmer joined Bentz at the news conference and said he will make a decision around the first of the year on whether or not to run for governor.
I'm letting people look at me and see what I stand for and what I believe in. So far, the response has been overwhelming. They like what I stand for and what I believe in, and I'm seriously considering it. It will be after the first of the year before I make a final decision on it.
Matt Carmack, WSFA TV News.
Well, I think
at the Lions Club, and I appreciate the invitation, but being a federal judge had its problems before I undertook it, but it was my man. He said, well, Judge said he called me a black, kinky-headed son of a... These complaints are expensive for the...
To have you on our federal people.
The best court system is of no value to one who finds his costs exceed his ability to pay. The greatest challenge confronting the court today in civil cases is bringing the cost of litigation within the reach of all American citizens. At times, justice of the law.
do all of the work, and perhaps I interpreted.
The search warrant.
I think it very timely that we establish a commission, such as this one, charged with the responsibility to eliminate these weakenings, to strengthen our system, the true classical meaning of a system of justice, and their work will consummate in legislation that will be introduced into the regular session in early January of next year. If you would be kind enough just to raise your hand. Mr. Buddy Riley, Montgomery businessman.
Under Alabama law, any efforts to impeach a sheriff go directly to the Supreme Court for argument. Today, Clark's attorney, former Alabama Attorney General Bill Baxley, asked the court to throw the charges out because of what he said were at least 2 errors in the charges of impeachment. Baxley says the 3 charges against Clark don't include his name. Baxley contends each charge should refer to his client by name and not as the sheriff. But Attorney General Charles Graddick, who filed the impeachment proceedings, says Clark's name was in what is known as the preamble to the charges, and stated that any reference to Clark in the actual charges would be as the sheriff. Baxley also asked the court to dismiss the proceedings because the Houston County grand jury indictment against Clark wasn't attached to the filings, a move Graddick argued wasn't necessary. Late today, the justices denied Baxley's requests, but Baxley reportedly intends to offer some additional motions, and because of that, the Supreme Court didn't set any date for the full hearing, which will center on the actual charges of impeachment. Meanwhile, Clark still faces a separate criminal trial in Dothan on charges of misconduct in office. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
5 senators in the state Senate, you have 35 Democrats. There's nothing, and I'm not going to wear all those different hats and different faces. Yes, sir. Sure do. Today, when I tell you that I am joining the Republican Party and I'm going to work hard to become their candidate for Senate in the state of Alabama, District 23.
Elmore County Sheriff Sidney Thrash says his department received a tip that marijuana was being grown in a greenhouse in the central community off Highway 9 in Elmore counties. When his deputies searched the greenhouse today, they found pot plants as high as 12 feet tall. Officials say the plants are worth more than $100,000, and it appears that the marijuana was destined to be shipped out of the county. Inside the trailer, located next to the greenhouse, deputy found bags of the dope ready for possible sale and weighing scales. Sheriff Thrash says the marijuana they confiscated today was very potent.
It's a more sophisticated type. I understand it comes out of Southern California. This particular kind does. It's more expensive and it takes more to grow it than to make it produce than the regular marijuana. The average marijuana, you can throw it down anywhere and it'll grow like a cane brake, you know. But this has to be cared for and nursed and be sure that it's fed and watered properly.
No arrest has been made in the case so far. Sheriff Thrash says his department is still trying to determine who owns the trailer and the greenhouse. In Elmore County, Don Phelps, WSFA TV News.
We got information a couple of weeks ago that it had been grown here at this particular residence. It just took us this long to get around to it. We've got so many fields out we watching, patches rather, not fields, but we've got so many patches we watching, we have to get around to it when we can.
How many plants did your men seize inside?
102. 102 plants, anywhere from 6 foot to 12 foot tall.
How about a dollar value?
I'd say over $100,000. I'm not good at estimating the value, but over $100,000.
charged 3. Each charge has to stand on its own. We've had many, many instances. I can't represent the court I have, but I think I've read every impeachment case in the history of this state this court has written about. I've looked at many of the records. I reckon this is in mitigation. Was the one decided they wanted to hear that rather than the Circuit Court of Houston County, I thought.
The Golden Tigers under first-year coach Alonzo Bully enter Saturday's game with Florida A&M sporting a 5-2 record. Both losses came on the road to Morris Brown in Atlanta and last week to Bethune-Cookman in Daytona Beach. On offense, Tuskegee's averaging close to 24 points per game with a passing attack that has yielded 12 touchdowns, but has also produced 22 interceptions. The defense, led by linebacker Kenneth Woodward, is giving up an average of 12 points per game. Florida A&M, on the other hand, is experiencing a heartbreaking season. The Rattlers have suffered from mental mistakes and turnovers and falling to a 2-4 record. A&M coach Rudy Hubbard is hoping this Saturday's game will turn the Rattler season around.
Oh, yeah, it's a critical ball game. I think, what's happened to our team, Gene, is been difficult to take, and it's been tough for our young men. But I think they've handled it well, and I think that they're still practicing hard, and the outlook is still positive. So, we're going to come out smoking still.
Kickoff for Florida A&M and Tuskegee Saturday in Tuskegee is set for 1:30. Rick Pons, WSFA TV Sports. It's the end of October, and you know what that means. Halloween is here, and the fans are ready. The players have also joined in the masquerade. But to their dismay, Halloween seems to be bringing more tricks than treats. They're not bobbing for apples out there, and a few guys are running into some pretty bizarre trouble. But there must be a friendly Halloween spirit out there somewhere. How else can you explain this disaster-turned touchdown? Finally, a trick-turned-treat.
Auburn President Hanley Funderburk says the money will be divided into 3 areas: $21.3 million for students and faculty, $16.4 million for new buildings, and $37.7 million for ongoing programs, for a grand total of $61,733,000.
We have designed a program that is broad in scope, but detailed in specifics. We have recruited leadership, prominent in America, but dedicated to Auburn.
Dr. Funderburk says a third of the money, almost $21 million, has already been collected, with 62% of the Auburn staff contributing. He says the $21 million for student and faculty will be used for student scholarships and grants and the development of the faculty. The $16 million for new buildings will be divided among the engineering department, veterinary medicine, and a new library tower at Auburn University at Montgomery. And the $37 million for ongoing programs will go for endowment, construction, and equipment purchases. Campaign officials predict it'll take 3 years for the entire fundraising program to unfold and all of Auburn's 80,000 alumni to be informed. Reporting from Auburn, Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
After a scoreless first quarter, the Generals mounted an early second quarter drive, but Marvin Humphreys picks off Courtney Ashcraft's pass at the 16. The Volunteers then mount an 8-play scoring drive. The Big Gator coming when quarterback Mike Turk scrambles out of the pocket and races 53 yards all the way down to the Lee 6. 2 plays later, Curtis Stewart dives over from the 2. The Vols try for 2 is good. And going into the second half, it's Jeff Davis 8, Lee nothing. Lee makes a game of it in the third quarter. Driving 43 yards, Ashcraft goes over from the 1. Coach Bo Boswell decides to go for 2, but the Vol defense rises to the occasion, and at the 4:30 mark of the third quarter, it's 8-6 Jeff Davis. The Vols put the game away early in the fourth, driving 80 yards in 11 plays. Quarterback Turk nails Steve Holloway with a 13-yard touchdown pass. With a point after, it's 15-6 JD. And with 4:10 remaining in the game, Stewart tallies again, this time from the 3. The final, Jeff Davis 22, Lee 6. The Vols end the season unbeaten through 10 games and look to the state playoffs in 2 weeks. Lee ends their season at 1-8. Reporting from Cramton Bowl, Rick Pons, WSFA TV Sports.
Point that that court approves. It's got to meet the criminal test. Every impeachment, we understand that. The only difference is there's a number of judges rather than a single trial judge. And we'll and one other.
May it please the court, Mr. Chief Justice, no procedure aspect at time of trial. If you'll notice, reasonable certainty.
You need to file more matter. You're talking about a week?
Yeah, we would like to have a little longer than that. Of course, we're hoping we don't have that. We
I
think
understand
our
that.
arguments are so good, we really don't think we'll get to that.
Beyond a reasonable doubt. Well, there's no question about it.
When officials opened the door to the greenhouse, they encountered a small forest of marijuana plants. Elmore County Sheriff Sidney Thrass says he counted 102 plants inside the building, ranging up to 12 feet tall. Also inside the greenhouse, there was fertilizer, potting soil, insecticide, and a basic but effective temperature control and irrigation system. Sheriff Thrass says he believes the crop of marijuana is fairly new.
I would say this is the first season. Just looking at it, everything looks fairly fresh in there, so I don't believe it's been there over this season.
Do you think this what you've seized here and what you've seen so far, was this grown for personal use, or do you think it was meant to go out of the county, or where?
Most likely to go out of the county, because this much stuff, one person couldn't use this much stuff at all.
Okay, what will happen now that you're loading the marijuana up in the trucks? What will be done after that?
It'll be destroyed except for a sample we'll keep for evidence, and then we'll look for the man that this place belongs to.
The marijuana found inside the building is a very potent variety known as Sinsemilla. Sheriff Thrass says the crop could have brought $100,000 and probably as high as $200,000 on the street. Inside the trailer, deputies found 15 bags of marijuana that had been harvested and packaged for possible sale, as well as weighing scales. Officials say they are still trying to determine who owns the trailer. So far, no arrest has been made in the case. Don Phelps, WSFA TV News.
During the hearing, Baxley asked for more time to prepare additional motions for dismissal of the charges against Clark. The sheriff was indicted last month by a Houston County grand jury on charges of forgery, using his office for personal gain, theft, and receiving stolen property. He faces criminal charges in Dothan for alleged misconduct in office. After yesterday's session, Attorney General Charles Graddick said he was pleased with the morning session and he will personally prosecute the case.
I would hope to try this case before the first of the year.
Baxley was more reserved in his statements about the morning session, saying more than once that ultimately all evaluations and decisions on the case rest with the court.
Well, it doesn't matter how I think, it's how the judges think. But we feel very comfortable that we're right, and we feel very confident that we'll get a fair hearing from them.
Meanwhile, the Supreme Court has not yet set a date for a full hearing on the specific charges of impeachment. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
Chitlins boiled or fried. It was the only item on the menu, and there was plenty of them for the chitlin-hungry folks attending the third annual Chitlin Jamboree. Most of the people here today are from Clio. However, there are those who drove from as far away as Kentucky to get some good down-home chitlins.
No, don't leave. For people who don't know what chitlins are, could you give us a definition?
Yes, they come from the inside of the hog, which is the intestines of the hog. And they used to be used for even making sausage, which a lot of people, I'm sure, are not familiar with.
There are those who say you just haven't lived until you've eaten a bowl of chitlins. And it seems both young and old alike enjoy them.
The boiled ones are terrible. The fried ones are pretty good.
How do you like them? They taste good?
Yeah. It tastes good.
What do they taste like?
It tastes like chicken.
You can eat them for snack, meal, because I really love them.
How many can you eat?
I don't know. That's a good question. I've never tested myself about how many I can eat, but I can eat a lot of them.
From the Chitlin Jamboree in Clio, Alabama, Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
At approximately 8:40 p.m. last night, we had a murder which occurred here in Troy at 112 Charles Drive, Apartment B. Mr. Gary Allen Ballard, who was white male, 33 years of age, was found dead in a rear bedroom of the residence. A suspect in the case, Mr. Larry Norman Jackson, was found in the living room of the residence, wounded.
There you go. Take a seat. And there you go. Gum, suckers, and baseball cards.
So you've been enjoying yourself?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
This was the play which put top-ranked Penn State in the hole. Leading 6-0, Miami quarterback Jim Kelly went 80 yards to Larry Brodsky. Miami got the two-point conversion and led 14-0. With 11 minutes to go, Miami's Danny Miller kicked his third field goal of the ball game. This one a 23-yarder, and the Hurricanes went on top 17-0. Finally, Penn State got rolling. Todd Blackledge hit tight end Mike McCloskey for a touchdown. That with 8:51 to play, Miami's lead was down to 17-6. The Nittany Lions got another chance. After recovering a Miami fumble, Blackledge found John Williams with a screen pass. Williams did the rest of the work. The two-point conversion was good, 17-14 Miami. Penn State gave it a final go, but no dice, as Miami came up with a tipped interception. 17-14 the final. Penn State becomes the 5th #1 ranked team to get upset this season. Rich Brenner for NBC News.
Auburn surprised Florida with a strong drive on its first possession. The big play was Tim Hobby to Mike Edwards' pass to the Florida 8-yard line. Auburn scored 3 plays later when Palatka, Florida freshman Clayton Buford ran the 3 into the end zone. It was 7-0 Auburn. The Tigers got a break on this play. Buford lost the ball. Actually, defensive back Tony Lilly stole it for what looked like a touchdown, but the officials ruled a dead ball at the spot of the turnover. Florida stalled, and Brian Clark kicked the first of 4 field goals. 7-3 Auburn. Florida got it right back. Clark's kickoff was high and short. Auburn fumbled it. Florida had it again at the 34-yard line of Auburn. Clark's 32-yarder made it Auburn 7 and Florida 6 in the second quarter. Auburn drove midway of the second for a score, aided by a face mask penalty. Freshman Ron O'Neal going the final yard. The rest of the way, two fine defensive units slugged it out. Florida adding field goals to make it 14-12, with Auburn trying to run the clock out on this play at the 2.5-minute mark. Florida gets it back, needing only a field goal to win. 3 plays, and Brian Clark ready to hit his 5th of the afternoon, but it's just wide to the left. Auburn has upset the Florida Gators 14-12. Auburn evens its record at 4-4. Florida drops to 5-3. This is Phil Snow reporting from Auburn. It was billed as a revenge battle. Bama looking to avenge last year's 6-3 loss in Jackson. But State came out looking very hard to beat. On the second play of the game, wingback Steve Wyndham throws the option. It's incomplete, but the Tide's Jim Bob Harris is called for interference at midfield. 2 plays later, quarterback John Bond pitches to Harvey Haddix. He rambles 40 yards all the way down to the Alabama 11. 3 plays later, on 1st and goal, Bond sneaks it into the end zone, and State leads it 7-0. A Bulldog turnover leads to Alabama's first score. Bond is popped by Benny Perrin, jarring the ball loose. It's recovered by Eddie Lowe. And Alabama's in business at the State 16. One of 4 State fumbles lost on the day. But Bama can't get it in the end zone. Peter Kim boots a 27-yard field goal. It's 7-3 midway through the first quarter. Alabama drives 49 yards for their only touchdown. On the 3rd play of the second quarter, the handoff to Ken Simon is fumbled at the goal line. Joe Carter pounces on it for Alabama in the end zone, and the Tide takes the lead 10-7. An Alabama fumble, one of 11 on the day, 7 of which were lost, gives State their next tally. The punt by Dana Moore hits the helmet of Gerald Sprinkle. Haddix recovers the ball at the Tide 33. Bama defense then stiffens. Dana Moore comes on, kicks a 32-yard field goal. That ties the game at 10. Alabama mounts a late first half drive, but that ends at the State 12 when Peter Kim misses a 29-yard field goal attempt. But Kim is injured. That knocked him out for the rest of the game, Kim injuring his ankle on the play. At halftime, the score is tied at 10. After an early Alabama second half fumble, it appeared State had scored when Bond connected on a 32-yard pass to Glenn Young. But the Bulldogs were guilty of holding, nullifying the play. Jim Bob Harris' interception later stopped the drive. The Tide got the winning field goal in the 4th quarter when freshman Terry Sanders, on for the injured Kim, booted it through from 29 yards out, giving Alabama a 13-10 lead. State wasn't out of it. Just like last week against Auburn, Bond led the Dogs on a late march. Starting at his own 21, in 5 plays, he drives State to the Bama 9. The big gainer, this 38-yarder to Wyndham. 3 plays later, under pressure, the ball is tipped by Eddie Lowe. Tommy Wilcox comes up with a big interception with just 20 seconds remaining in the game, giving Alabama the 13-10 win. Win number 313 for the fabled coach Bear Bryant, and the 54th straight in Bryant-Denny Stadium.
The new postal rates took effect at midnight last night and come just in time for holiday mailing. In addition to the first-class stamp increase from 18 to 20 cents, postcards have been boosted a penny to 13 cents. At the same time, some second-class mail rates will drop slightly. The cost of mailing a letter has risen steadily over the last decade. From 1968 to 1971, the cost of mailing a first-class letter was 6 cents. It was 8 cents from 1971 to 74, 10 cents in 1974 and 75, 13 cents from 1975 to 78, and 15 cents from 1978 until it went to 18 cents earlier this year. U.S. postal officials say despite today's increase, the cost of mailing a letter in the United States will be the lowest in the industrialized world in January, when Canada raises its rates to 30 cents. The Postal Service has issued billions of stamps throughout the country bearing the letter C. They will be used until stamps bearing the new rates are available.
As far as future increases are concerned, U.S. postal officials in Washington say the current rate should remain stable for about 2 years. Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
James Press Secretary Wendy Lovell says the trip next month was originally scheduled for earlier this year in May, but was postponed when the legislature failed to pass an education budget during the regular session. But now, with that bit of business out of the way, James is intent on bringing some more business into the state. Lovell says the trip is scheduled for the 5th through the 17th of December. During that time, the governor is to visit with business, government, and financial leaders in Tokyo and Osaka, Japan, and Seoul, Korea. But recently, there has been criticism of the governor's efforts to bring business into the state. Lovell says the governor's efforts are good. It's just that business is being very cautious during these hard economic times.
Well, there are several reasons why that may be the case. I don't think Alabama is any different from any other state at this particular point, particularly with respect to the economy. Foreign industry is very apprehensive about moving to the United States unless they've already had firm committed plans because of the exchange rate, where they lose 12 to 15% exchanging their currency into dollars, and then beyond that look to financing in America, which is running anywhere from 17 to 20%. So foreign companies take a real beating when they come into the United States, and other companies in the United States that are considering moving to another state, such as Alabama, had simply put those plans on the back burner.
Lovell says Alabama lags behind other southeastern states in the number of foreign industries it supports. Hopefully, the governor's trip will help Alabama catch up with its neighbors. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
One of those things, but 1854 C. 10-4. So I can cut the cameraman out.
In the Tigers' win over Florida, Auburn jumped out to a 14-9 halftime lead and then relied on defense to preserve the win.
Auburn got touchdown runs of 3 yards from Clayton Buford in the first quarter and a yard out from Ron O'Neal in the second quarter. Florida place kicker Brian Clark kept the Gators in the game with first half field goals from 30, 32, and 43 yards out. The defenses slugged it out in the second half. The only dent in the scoreboard, another Florida field goal. Leading 14-12 and trying to run out the clock and preserve the win at midfield, Auburn was struck with disaster. Quarterback Ken Hobby fumbled. The Gators recovered only 31 yards from the Tiger goal line. But 3 plays left Florida unable to get a much-needed first down. On trots Clark to attempt his 4th three-pointer of the day. The 40-yard effort sails wide, and Auburn has a hard-fought 14-12 upset of Florida. Auburn now 4-4 on the year.